Christian, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Jason. Thank you.
First off, can you tell me a little bit about AppViewX as a company and what you guys do and before we get into the specific solution?
Yeah, sure. So AppUX, we position ourselves as an application identity and access management company. We look at two different areas of our business where we look at digital identity management, where we do things with like certificate lifecycle management, PKI. But then we also talk about and position products in the application infrastructure management space. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. We've got a product called ADC Plus. We've been working closely with F5 for a number of years. We do a lot around automation and orchestration of workflows in order to optimize traffic and optimize processes for F5 customers, so for big IP and Nginx. And that's really kind of what we're going to be showing you today is some automated workflows and a solution for migrating and updating big IP, as well as how you can do automated migrations from say Citrix to F5 and make that process very, very simple and simplistic.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I was at a agility many years ago where I first met an individual from AppViewX, and back at that time it was more kind of like not really a competitor at an enterprise manager, but a complementary part where it was mostly configuration management and operational details. So you guys have come a long way. That's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the sort of the competition, but there's also what we do, what we can really do more to help F5 customers out, and really working more more in a cooperative fashion in how we can solve a lot of challenges and automate a lot of processes that save a lot of time and like I said earlier, really optimize the F5 environment.
Awesome. Well, thank you for making the time to be here. And I know we have a demo coming, so let's get to that. Kartik, welcome to the show, and you're going to give us the down and dirty details, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jason. Absolutely excited to present the demo, especially the whole migration from Citrix to F5. Looking forward.
All right. Let's get to that. I'll share out your screen.
So thank you, Jason. So in this session, let's do a deep dive into the migration of configurations from Citrix ADC to F5. So before we deep dive into the ADC and the migration capabilities, quick overview on the platform. So AppViewX is one platform for machine identity and application infrastructure protection across hybrid cloud and edge. And the platform in itself is data driven. So it provides visibility and context into configurations, analytics across PKI, security, and operations team. So there are two parts to AppViewX. Today we'll focus on the application infrastructure side. So what is application infra, basically, right? So we manage the system of records in terms of configuration and the infrastructure attributes, focusing on application traffic, security, and performance. So what entails application infrastructure is the whole DNS, DHCP, IPAM, the DDI domain, the load balancers, web application firewalls, and firewalls. On the machine identity, the focus is on certificates and keys for authentication encryption across workloads and devices. So which means across on-premise, cloud, and containers, and across different endpoints across hybrid cloud and edge. So let's just understand quickly what ADC can help enterprises achieve in terms of their digital transformation goals. So what are the problem we're looking to solve through AppViewX ADC? One is we understand that there's a growing number of applications, and especially with the shift to hybrid cloud infra. So there's a lot of complexities in that architecture. And there's a lack of visibility in an application-centric context across the application infra services and the security services. And there's a lot of configurations, manual process, which is error-prone, and there is still lack of agility in terms of provisioning load balancer configurations, DNS services, orchestrating into ITSM systems, DNS, DevOps, and the GitOps process. And the other key thing with the ADCs is, given the complexity in configurations, it's critical that there could be errors, there could be breaches, there could be compliance violations and vulnerabilities that could lead to downtime and network breaches. Yeah. And then the resulting, and what are we trying to solve is ensuring application time and availability. Yeah. Across application teams, network, DevOps, and SecOps. So what is the ADC Plus solution? So ADC offers a centralized control and orchestration across multi-vendor and multi-cloud ADCs, supporting of FIs and a bunch of other vendors, and provides a complete app-centric visibility into the application infrastructure space. and visibility into the CVEs and the compliance violations based on the baseline defined. And then, of course, self-service and orchestration across your day zero and day one setup in terms of load balancing configurations, provisioning of new FIs, integrating into DevOps vendors like Ansible, Terraforms. And then the other key thing is to ensure business continuity and uptime. So we take care of the complete disaster recovery process in terms of backing up and restoration of ADC FI configurations. And then, of course, ensuring the application cutover in terms of blue, green, and canary-based deployment through intelligent traffic control. In terms of security and compliance, we provide app-centric insights into the CVEs and the compliance across the FI and the ADC landscape with automated badge management solutions. So core focus today is how does AppViewX ADC help migrate complex configurations from Citrix to FI? Now, what are the problem that we are looking at, right? One is there is a shift in the application delivery infra across enterprises. And given the complex nature of ADC configurations, right, the syntax is also complex. So which means there is complication in terms of migrating any configurations from vendor A to vendor B. So in this case, Citrix to FI. And the whole process is error prone, manual, and time intensive, right? Which means automation is the way out. And in doing so, right, applications can be on across different devices. It's critical that the uptime assurance and application availability is always is maintained. So business continuity is paramount. So what's the solution through AppViewX ADC? One is the whole process, which is manual, error prone, and complex, is automated through AppViewX ADC solutions from Citrix to FI. And the intelligence comes in the form of understanding the configuration syntax in terms of mapping all the taxonomies and the configurations from Citrix context to the FI context. So that's where the complexity is sort of simplified. And it's not just migration of the whole configurations. It's imperative that application availability is ensured. So in that context, we'll be able to migrate configurations, ensure that you're able to bleed the traffic from Citrix and then switch over the traffic back to the FIs after the migration process so that the application traffic cutover is taken care, right? And the best thing about this whole solution is what typically takes days or weeks is now brought down to roughly about 60 minutes to 90 minutes. And the whole process in terms of migrating configurations from Citrix to FI is fully automated.
That's fantastic. Saving time is always a good thing, but also the manual error issues that you have, especially coming from a context you might not understand or going to a context you might not understand. You know, having that full parse ability on both ends, that's pretty critical.
Absolutely. So how is it? We now know the problem, we know the solution. So how does AppViewX help solving this problem? So I'll just summarize in quick steps. So like I said, the configurations are complex with ADCs and the syntax is even more complex. So in terms of mapping the terminologies in terms of the object configurations from Citrix SLBs and GSLBs to FI LTMs and GTMs, including the SSLT, the certificates, attributes is critical. So that's where the complexity is completely eliminated. So what do we do in 5 steps? So one is AppViewX is our multi-vendor management platform, helps you manage the devices. So in this case, Citrix and FI devices both. And in terms of the whole migration journey, first the operations team would have to select the source device, the partition, all of that, based on which AppViewX will be able to retrieve the existing Citrix configurations for SLB, GSLB, and the certificate attributes. This is where the intelligence comes in terms of mapping the configuration syntax between Citrix to FI. Once that is understood, we also check for if there are any duplicate IPs and the virtual server mappings on Citrix, right? So we eliminate any sort of collision or duplication there before we construct the commands. So once we understand if there are no duplications, there is a process that takes care of migrating the Citrix SLB, GSLB configurations into an FI context. And all the certificates from Citrix are also seamlessly migrated to FI. Yeah. And then the best part is we understand configurations as part of the migration process could be complex. There is a need for the configurations to be reviewed. So the network teams have an opportunity through AppViewX's workflows to actually review the configurations and validate. And all of this is also integrated within ITSM process, right? It could be ServiceNow, Jira, Remedy, so that if at all there's a change window, we're able to integrate into the ITSM systems. And before provisioning or pushing the configurations to the F5, there is specific pre-validation checks that gets taken care by AppViewX in terms of the device health, if there are any duplications and all of that. And once if there are no hiccups there, so then the whole configuration is migrated onto the F5, and then we'll be able to perform the application cutover process and then route the traffic into the F5s logically. That's a summary of how we intend to migrate, demonstrate how it happens.
On that real quick, as far as objects are concerned, for things that might be unique to Citrix or to F5, how are things like iRules or local traffic policies, or how are things managed for that? Like if I don't really know the Citrix product that well, but if they have an equivalent of iRules, how does that map? Is that part of it, or are those objects flagged as part of, hey, you might need to do something with this?
Yeah. So there are two parts to it. One is as since AppViewX understand the system of records, both for Citrix and F5, we completely understand the objects and the configuration. And then we have a logical mapping that includes iRule translations. Of course, there will be the 5% that probably needs manual work, but predominantly most of the configuration between Citrix and F5 is all automated through the workflows here.
Okay.
So before I deep dive into the demo, so the first stage is, so this is where the user gets to input the source device, select the partitions, and gets to view all the SLB and the GSLB configurations here. So once this is done, and if at all the configurations, the virtual server details needs to be changed for F5, the workflow provides a self-servicing form where user gets to actually change the naming conventions and all of that. And also the duplicate check happens in terms of what virtual servers and IPs are duplicate, and there's a summary of that report that gets excluded, which is important here. Once the configurations are ready to be migrated from Citrix to F5, this is where operations team get to actually review the entire configuration here and also review the post validation commands. This is across the SLB and the GSLB configurations. So, and eventually you also get a migration report in terms of operations team getting a view of what specific objects indeed got migrated or did not get migrated successfully, so that then you can take specific remedial action here, right? So this migration report is critical. And then finally, the actual running config, there is a one-to-one mapping of the actual Netscaler config versus the F5 config. So it gives a comprehensive view of what configurations were converted in an F5 context. So it's all available in one shot. So now that the whole configuration is migrated, it's imperative that the application cutover also happens. You're able to bleed the traffic from Citrix to F5. So this widget, the blue-green or the canary rollout widget, helps operations team to actually ensure testing of the whole process and then switch all the traffic back to the F5s. So this completes the whole journey in terms of migrating the configurations, solving the complexity, and ensuring application cutover happens logically. So that way there is no downtime, there is no errors, and the whole process is completely automated.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the bread and butter right there, right? It's one thing to say, hey, we converted a config for you, go, but to be able to see that actual migration in the same tool, to see what's alive now versus what's alive once we do the migration, that's critical, and that's super helpful.
Absolutely. So without much delay, let me get into the actual demo itself. So now that I log in, let me quickly go to the service catalog where I have the Netscaler to F5 migration. So when I click on this, operations team get a simple self-servicing form where you provide self-servicing inputs in terms of selecting your source device, selecting the objects, changing any sort of naming conventions for SLB and the GSLB objects, and then proceeding to migrating the whole configurations. So this is where I select the Netscaler device, a Citrix device from which we need to migrate the SLB and GSLB configurations to F5. You select the partition here. All of this is automated. Select the applications. I select all. So you get the list of all the applications here. Select everything. So this is where, since AppViewX understands the system of record, the configurations for both Citrix and F5, operations teams can get a complete view of the SLP configurations here. And then if at all any sort of naming conventions, the virtual server details have to be modified, you can actually modify and update it back here.
I was going to ask that, like if you wanted to do a nomenclature change of some kind when you're migrating, it's like, hey, I wanted to change that for years. That's helpful. Good.
So this is where you get a complete view of the SLP configurations, modify the nomenclature, or if you can just ignore this. And this is where you get the complete view into the GSLP configurations here. Likewise, I get the wide IP names, the pool members, everything in a Citrix context here. And then likewise, if you want to change the nomenclature, you have the options here, and then you edit back. Yeah. And then finally, the destination device, right? Now that we've know the source Citrix device, we understand the SLB configurations and the GSLB configurations from Citrix. And then if there is any nomenclature change, you select the destination device on which the change needs to be made. I'm going to select the destination device here. And then if you want to select any specific partition in F5, you can do so. So once this is done, you can actually review the selection that's happened as part of the migration process. Click submit. Once the submission has happened, the whole orchestration process in terms of understanding the configuration syntax from Citrix and mapping it to F5, the whole process is automated. And then operations team will get to review the whole process here. While this may take some time, I'm going to show an existing flow that's fully completed here. So let me take a
select real quick before you move on. To be able to select the destination for particular workloads, like you didn't just migrate an entire Citrix device to an entire F5 device. You're selecting workloads within a device and sending those workloads to a different device. So like if you were maybe migrating and you wanted to not just change nomenclature, but kind of re-architect your environment and split loads and different, maybe vertical zones within a DMZ or whatever, you can move some of those workloads to one, other workloads to the other. That's neat.
Absolutely. So once this is done, so this is where the complexity is completely eliminated. So this is the review process where you get to get a complete view of the whole configuration that's being translated from a Citrix context to an F5 context here. All the pool member configurations, the virtual service configurations here, and the certificates that are getting migrated here. So this is the complete GSLB translation that's happened from Citrix to F5, and any sort of post validation, right? If you want to list all the objects, if you want to validate as per the provisioning process, you get to do so. And if there is integration into change management systems like ServiceNow, PMC, or Jira, you can actually integrate into that. Let me just say 3, 4, 5, 6, approved. So this is where you can provide your comments and approve so that there is complete audit, governance, and control over what's getting pushed onto the device so that there are no errors in this whole provisioning process. So once that is done, a few more steps as part of the migration process, and then it'll go through the synchronization between the F5 active and primary, and then AppViewX will be able to completely migrate the configurations. While this takes some time, let me quickly show you one of the completed requests here, and then go back to the actual one. So this is a completed request where we just saw how you can provide inputs, change the nomenclature, push to specific target device. This is where the certificates are also getting pushed to the F5s here. This is where the duplicate checks, if any, are happening on Citrix so that any sort of duplication is excluded from the migration process. This is quickly the review process. Again, like I said, this integrates with our standard ITSM vendors so that if there is a change window, you can actually set a change window and then ensure the CAP review happens. The change advisory board process, it goes through the whole review process. And then the migration of the configurations from Citrix to F5 happens here. And once that is done, you go through the post-validation process in terms of listing all the configurations here. You get to review what's happened after the migration process. If you actually see, list all the pools, the virtual servers, all the information's on F5 right here. And then synchronization, if there is active standby, a complete sync into the HA happens on the F5. And then once that is done, a complete migration report, right? So because you never know what's going to happen as part of the migration process, we want it to be 100% successful. But should there be any sort of failures, you also get a migration report clearly that states what specific configurations were successful or failed, and this can be emailed or sent to you automatically on Slack. And this is a complete summary report here, right? You get a complete view of the object names here, a complete list of the objects, the type of the object, was it a virtual server, wide IP, certificate, whatnot, and the migration status here, right? So we had 4 failed. You have the complete report of which specific configurations failed and which ones were successful, so that you get to audit. And then, of course, finally compare the whole Netscaler configurations on a one-on-one basis with the FI configurations. Yeah, if you wish to download, you can download as CSV, Excel, PDF. This is a complete process.
Yeah, that's cool. So a failure, does that mean that you're in a state to where the app you thought you were moving is now not working? Or does it just mean that, hey, we weren't able to migrate this, but that workload is still running on your Citrix?
Yeah, the workload is still running on the Citrix. There's probably some sort of a duplicate failure due to which it failed, but we'll be able to provide a complete audit of why it failed, and then we'll be able to take remedial action.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Another question I had is that for migrations, you're migrating like object to object. For F5's declarative automation toolchain, do you have the ability to, go straight from a Citrix workload if the customers want to a AS3 declaration?
Absolutely. We understand we have common customers using AS3. That's something that we are working as we speak. It should be out in a couple of months. So that's definitely as part of the process as well.
Cool.
Yeah. So now, like I said, this is just the configuration migration part. So I'll just show you how the cutover can happen here. So once you have all the migrations, once you know all your applications running on either Citrix or F5, so AppViewX provides something called as a blue, green, or a canary rollout widget, where you can actually see the application, and if it's based across different data centers or locations, this is where you actually get to bleed the traffic from Citrix and then route the traffic as part of your testing process or application testing process. This is where the cutover happens. So then the whole traffic flows into F5, and you also get a complete live statistics into what's happening on specific applications, right? In this case, across Citrix and F5. And how do we manage all the inventories, all the devices basically in the inventory? This is where you get to add your Citrix devices and the FI devices. So once you add, AppViewX actually understands the system of records, the device, and the configuration details, so to speak. So once this is done, this is where AppViewX becomes like the single source of truth, and then the automation process in terms of migrating from Citrix to F5 is then seamless, since we understand the configurations and the device information in detail.
I think for customers who like to remain, that like maintain a distributed perspective of vendors to be able to withstand the changes that each vendor has. It's kind of nice to have a tool that understands all of it. So legitimately you can move workloads back and forth as you need to.
Yep.
For things even like, I think you mentioned CVE checking and validation. If you have a situation to where a vendor says, hey, we have a vulnerability but we don't have a fix for it yet, you can move a workload from one to the other until that thing's patched. And so there's a lot of value in that. That's cool.
Absolutely. So just quick summary. This is the whole self-service portal. So in terms of the security and the compliance process, so this is where AppViewX, since it understands all the devices, it can provide a comprehensive view into the overall risk summary and what's the rating in the organization, the previous grade and the current grade. You get a complete view of the critical vulnerabilities, the high and the medium vulnerabilities, so to speak. And you get the risk summary in an application context, right? So applications could be on F5s, it could be on a firewall, whatnot. So AppViewX will be able to sort of understand which application basically has how many number of CVEs and on which affected devices here. So this is where you get a complete view of the applications which may be at risk. In terms of the remediation process, which is again error prone and manual, this is where the recommendations comes in, where you can actually select the tier of the applications, select specific application, and then remediate here. Once you remediate, we'll be able to provide the the complete firmware upgrades here. Yeah. So this is the whole CVE dashboard. In terms of compliance, should there be any sort of compliance violations across configurations, we'll again be able to provide a comprehensive view of the policy violations in a dashboard, and also provide remedial actions here, right? So this report provides a simple view of what is the configuration deviation here from the baseline setup versus the actual running config. It shows the expected value and clearly shows your report of what specific configuration was compliant and non-compliant. Yeah. And this is where the whole policy, the baseline, the golden configuration policy, so to speak, gets defined here. Define all the config rule sets here, and then you run a scan on the device, and then you get the whole compliance dashboard.
Good deal. Yeah. Thank you. That's great.
Yep. So quickly going back to the migration, now that we just saw the configurations got migrated, I've just logged into the FI device. So the problem statement here was to migrate complex configurations from Citrix to FI. I've just logged into the FI device. When we quickly go to the DNS section, the GSLB section, the wide IP list. So if you see, all the configurations from Citrix to FI was indeed migrated here, domain.appvx.net and whatnot. In terms of the virtual servers, when I go to the virtual servers, I have all the configurations now on the FI right here. Right? Likewise, within AppVieX, since AppVieX is able to understand the configuration in depth, right? So if I actually look for the specific device here, this is where I get a complete view of what's specific. Okay, just search for the configurations on the device. So AppVieX already has all of these configurations migrated from Citrix to FI. I now know the hierarchy of the objects from the GTM to the end server. When I click on that, I get complete visibility into how the whole application services are laid out on FI, right? So I was able to migrate, we were able to migrate the configurations, and then we checked on the device, and then we also get complete visibility into the configurations, and then perform specific self-service actions, and then we ensure that the business continuity remains, so that there's no application downtime, and the whole process is seamless, is not error prone, and saves a lot of time.
Yeah. Well, wow. That you accomplished quite a lot without a whole lot of click ops. So that's really cool. If for those who are automation savvy, is there an API driven access to do this kind of work, or is it mostly click ops in the GUI that you showed me?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jason. So there are both options. One is you have access to the AppVieX GUI and you can perform the actions that I just showed. And then you also have an API-based orchestration support. So we support both API and GUI-based approach.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well, thank you. That was a fantastic demo. I appreciate both Rick, you and Christian for joining me today and sharing out, the power of your solution, as, it relates not just to, what we do here at F5, but, being able to help customers with their workloads in, whether it's F5 or not, and migrating workloads, updating from, old to new, understanding the context of where you're going to where you want to be is a powerful thing. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Jason. It's all about making it simple and making it making it very easy for for multiple teams to basically self-service their own actions. Kartik showed earlier that service catalog that we have. So the one use case here with Citrix to F5 migrations is one of those workflow orchestrations that we have in the service catalog. There's hundreds of others which make it very basically click and automate, click and orchestrate, and that's really the whole idea of the product, and adding value and providing value to F5 customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, both of you, thank you so much for joining me today, and you guys have a great week.